Hello, welcome to 2 plus 2 equals cabbage. In this video, we're going to talk about how to create an account in OCI so we can publish with Terraform. There's a few things we'll cover, including what's required. We'll get things together like the user, an API key, group, a policy, everything we need for that. And then at the end, we'll build a sample terraform.tfrs file. Let's figure it out together. Let's dive right in. So here we are, we're at the Oracle Cloud Console, cloud.oracle.com. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new user account. And we'll start off at the hamburger menu up here in the top left corner. And we'll slide down to identity and security. And then we'll click on domains. So here we're assuming that we've got a pretty basic OCI deployment with no subcompartments or no additional domains. We're really just starting off from the default. We want to pay attention here in case you do have some additional features within your tenant. We're working at the root of our domain, of our tenant, and we're just going to click on the default domain. And once we're in here, we can see all the different things in here that we might find useful in the future, things like the domain OCID. OCIDs are pretty commonly used throughout OCI, so we'll come across those along the way. But we're going to go over here and we're going to click on users. And then we're going to click on create user. And for this case, we're not going to use an email address as the username, so we will uncheck that box. And we'll just type in the required fields here. We'll start with Terraform test as our last name and our username for this use case. And then we'll just hit create. Now, once the user has been created, we need to go and gather an API key. So right on this same page here where we were left, we can scroll down to the API keys on the left, click on that, and then we just need to click Add API Key. So this will bring up a dialog here to create the API key. We can just leave it at the default and generate an API key pair for ourselves. If you wanted to upload your own, you can do that here, but we'll take the easy path here and just have it create our own. And we'll download the private key. We'll need to use that later, so we'll have that handy. And then once we've done that, we hit add. And then it shows us a lot of the information that we're going to need for Terraform. So we can just copy what's in this box here, put it in a text file off on the side. Things like the user, the fingerprint, those are important for us when we start working with Terraform. Once we've gathered that information, we can just click close. So we've got our user, we've got our API key. Now we need to create a group. So we're going to go up to the hamburger menu again, back to identity and security, back to domains. And there's more than one way that we can get to any number of these things that we're working on. I'm just showing you the basics to get used to the menu structure. So once we're back here, we'll click our domain again, and then we're going to go into groups. And in here, we're going to create a group. And let's just call this, we can call this also Terraform test. That will be our group name. It does require a description, so we'll make sure we include that. We'll click create here. And we're left right on this on the dialog for the group that we just created, so we can just go right here and assign a group. And we can pick our test users that we created earlier and hit add. So now we've got our user, our API key, our group, and our user is added to the group. Next step, we're going to create an IAM policy to assign permissions to that group so it can publish with Terraform. So back to the hamburger menu, identity and security. Then we're going to go to policies here instead, because we're going to create a new policy. And we'll hit create policy, provide a name for our policy. And a description. it is going still in our root compartment. And then in order to edit the policy, we'll use the show manual editor option. And this is a free form box here where we can type the syntax of the policy. So we're going to allow group Terraform test to manage all resources in Tennessee. So what this does is it allows the group we created, which was Terraform test, to manage all the resources in the tenancy. Now, this is a lab environment, so we're allowing permissions to the whole tenancy. If it were a production environment, we probably would be a little bit more judicious about how we doled out permissions. We might create compartments and restrict access to just one compartment, perhaps, so we know exactly where that Terraform has the ability to publish. But in this case, we're just doing it to learn how to do it. So we can just do it as we see here in tenancy, and then we'll just hit create. So now that the policy is created, the only other thing we need to get is our compartment OCID. Since we're working in the root, it's really getting the root OCID, so we'll go find that. So we can go back to the hamburger menu under identity and security. We can click on compartments. And we only have the one compartment here, so we can just click on the compartment. And right here is where we're going to find the OCID for the compartment. So we will copy that off into our clipboard. And then that's it. So we've done everything we need to do in the console. Now we'll switch over to a text editor and we can edit the terraform.tfrs file and see what's next. Okay, with everything we've gathered from the OCI console, we can now construct our terraform.tfrs. This example that we're showing on the screen here is a template from the GitHub for some of the OCI projects that we'll be working on in the future. The first thing we're going to grab from our clipboard that we copied off of the console is the user ID. And that's the OCID of the user we created. And we'll just copy that in here. Paste it right into place. The next thing we'll get is the tenancy OCID. And again, we got that from the console. And it's in our clipboard, so we'll just paste that into there. Then we're going to go and grab our fingerprint. And the fingerprint goes in right in this spot here. And then the last thing that we need is the compartment OCID. And we'll paste it in here. I'll clean this up a little bit so it's a little bit easier to read. Okay, so the critical things that we gathered from the console when we created the user was the tenancy OCID, the user OCID, the fingerprint from the API key, and then the compartment OCID. So those are the critical things that we need. Everything else, we'll build it in as we do further projects. We will need to specify the region, environment name, location, and a public IP for when we're trying to first set up workloads there so we can secure access to them. Well, that's all we need for now. So we're in good shape to move on to the next projects. Thanks for visiting 2 + 2 = Cabbage. If you found this video useful, like and subscribe to show me there are people out there who would like to see more of this content.